Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the iHeartRadio network, the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports have been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys from down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France, and of course you good old boys up in Canada. But Big C, there's still no one I love more than you good old boys down south. And the land of the free and the home of the brave. Today is a beautiful August the 4th on Friday. I think they call it Happy Friday, Big C. Is a Happy Friday down south, Big C, for you good old boys.
I'm still trying to work off that six-pack and that pint of hot rice last night. I should have stuck with only just one of them, but both of them made me feel good and satisfied.
Yeah.
This is a way to work yourself into the weekend with a little bloating going on.
Yeah, Haagen-Dazs is a lot like those potato chips. You can't just eat one, Big C. You can't just eat one spoon. I remember one time a pastor was talking about how he's trying to stay in shape and how other people need to stay in shape too. He said he only has one spoon of ice cream, and a lot of people roll their eyes because no one can have just one spoon of ice cream. Is that the case, Big C, you found out?
When I was finished eating ice cream, I turned it up and let the drippings drip into my mouth. I think I may have had more than 1 teaspoon of it.
That's funny, Big C. Today's segment is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. I was at a USA sports camp today for Nike basketball here in Northern California. Just want to remind a lot of people that the youth are really the future, and we got to tell them the same thing the camp taught Big C. Big C, they said you got to be honest, you want to have sportsmanship, and you got to do right no matter if it's a popular thing or not. So obviously maybe the NFL owners can get that message. Big C, I do want to say today is President Obama's birthday, but I want to get your thoughts on the USA Nike camps, what they're saying about do the right thing even if it's tough. Big C, your thoughts.
Throughout the decades.
Yeah.
It's do the right thing, be honorable, be respectful. I mean, and when you look at where sports is now, ownership wants people to be dishonest criminals in sports.
Yeah.
We look across the ledger, regardless of the professional sport it is.
Yeah.
And it's full of criminals. I mean, they're honest about being criminals, so I guess that's part of honesty also. But when you look at character, they've always talked about the content of character in sports.
Yeah.
Al Davis used to be the character of his team. Even though it was bad boys, it was the character of his team that, made the greater nation great.
Yeah.
And over the decades, all the teams have looked at the character of players. I mean, players don't get drafted because you look at character. But, nowadays it seems to come of high character individuals are something that the league is not looking for.
Yeah.
The systemic attitude that they have that, you have to be subordinate. We're paying you a good deal of money. So you have to walk around with your tail tucked between your legs like a scared dog.
Yeah.
And do what we say. We can snatch your career from under you, blackball you, and yes, you can. Any business in America can do that, Charlie. We're not just talking about the professional leagues, NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, and hockey.
Yeah.
Any organization, any law firm, any hospital, can take a professional's career away from them, Charlton.
Yeah.
But to do it in a way that you're lambasting them in the limelight, that you're going out and you're being so prevalent about it. Your racism, your speak up for America attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we look at athletes use racial epithets up and down the ledger.
All the time.
And that's acceptable. We look at athletes commit crimes, and that's acceptable. But when you have an athlete who stands up for anti-crime, anti-injustice, that's not acceptable by the establishment because the establishment, Charlton, is the one that's creating that problem.
Yeah, last night we had the Hall of Fame game, and I think it's a bad thing to have it on Thursday. People got to go to work on Friday morning. Do it on a Saturday so people can relax, get into the game. They can even travel if they want to. And they can also not have to worry about getting up at 5 o'clock to go to work the next morning. So it wasn't a sellout crowd, but it's still a gorgeous place. I do want to ask you some thoughts. Al Michaels does it as well as anybody, he and Chris Collinsworth. But I thought they dropped the ball last night when they were asking Jerry Jones just about Ezekiel Elliott. What is Jerry Jones going to do? Change the story when he gets on national TV? I thought what they could have done, because I think he's part of the committee that deals with all the team issues, they could have asked him that issue that's more prominent than any other issue in the NFL. And that's just the racism toward Colin Kaepernick for standing up for Black Lives Matter, as if it's more important for them to talk about things that he knows he's not going to change his mind on. He could have asked him, just like the Rooney Rule. There is still racism in the NFL, and how would he, as one of the good old boys, address it, BC? Your thoughts? Yeah.
He is as much of it as you've seen the owner Mara, from the Giants and the owner from the Ravens, Shelton. He has that same mindset. So as a broadcast company, you're not going to go out there and put your partner out on the fire. You're not going to do it. You're going to play the sacrificial lamb, leave Kaepernick out of the scenario, and why the reason Kaepernick is not signed. For Michaels to ask that question to Jones, Shelton, the only question that he could ask of Jerry Jones is, how do you time and time again keep hiring fellas?
Yeah.
How do you keep fellas on your roster in Dallas?
Yeah.
What's the difference with having fellas on your roster? What makes that a better organization? Since this is America's team, and you hire more fellas than any other owner in the NFL.
Yeah.
This is the question that you ask Jerry Jones, not about Colin Kaepernick, but what is his modus operandi
Yeah.
as far as hiring fellas and thinking that makes the National Football League better and his team better, Joe?
Yeah, and that juxtaposes, as I mentioned, I was at a Nike basketball camp today for the youth at a local high school in Northern California, and they talk about doing, like the Boy Scouts things, honor, integrity, do the right thing, even if it's difficult, because that's what builds a leader. Anyone can, hide under a rock, but like Dr. King, Mahatma Gandhi, Rosa Parks, even if you want to say Lyndon Johnson, they did things because they did the right thing, and hopefully athletes can understand that as you get to the pro levels, it's all a lie. You just got to do the company line, Big C. I do want to say a little bit, the game was 2018, obviously exhibition game, so hopefully they'll play it on a weekend next time so more people can do it and get there. One more thing, too, about POTUS. I think POTUS is on vacation. Is this 46 days out of 6 months he's been on vacation? And my math is right. I think that's a month and a half, Big C. Your thoughts? Yeah.
Here it is, he's on a 17-day span right now, vacation, Johnson, at his golf resort up in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Now, he's only been in office a little over 6 months. And
Yeah.
by the time his vacation is, Johnson, that would be 46 days that President Trump has spent on vacation from the White House not working.
Yeah.
Not that he's working with his ass, so, I guess,
Yeah. That's funny. What?
But you think about that, during the same time span, Charlton, as
Yeah.
President Obama's presidency, he was only gone from the White House for 22 days.
Yeah.
Out of that 6-month span, 22 versus 46, and everybody said he's doing a wonderful job, and I guess if you're not at work, you are doing a wonderful job, because the
Yeah.
is more quiet and safer when he's not in the White House, Charlton, than when it is when he's in the White House.
Yeah.
Here it is today, he has his Attorney General launching an investigation on White House leaks. Okay?
Yeah.
All these people work for you that are leaking this story. As a matter of fact, you and your family look at
He just got to look in the mirror. Yeah.
Here it is, the Attorney General of the United States is spending money, American dollars, on who's letting the words out of the White House.
Yeah.
Now, if you were doing anything improper, you should be worried about the leaks coming out of the White House.
Yeah.
But if you're running the presidency for what you were elected to do, you should be happy that leaks are coming out of the White House.
Ironically, he called it fake news whenever the media came up with something. Now he's launching an investigation into his own White House, Big C. So is that a fake investigation? It makes you wonder, Big C. But when POTUS wants to launch an investigation against himself, I want to jump into the world of boxing. Bob Arum, a little bit of talk about McGregor, Mayweather. Now that they're not running around the world cussing each other out, I think the intensity of that fight has died down some, Big C. It's almost like you go and you meet people who drink too much. You got friends that do the moonshine thing, and they get more brave as they get more moonshine in their system. But as you tend to sober up, you start looking at the science of boxing and the science of MMA. This is not an MMA match. It's more of the science of boxing. And when Bob Arum looks at the science of boxing, I think he would say it's a like 501 chance that McGregor could beat him. No one in their right mind, now that they're all sober and the hype is worn down, no one can say that someone who's never boxed anywhere, and at least a world champion, has a chance of beating him when you've never ever been in the ring with a world champion boxer. Big C, your thoughts? Yeah.
Not only that, though, Charlton, you think about the European side of it in England.
Yeah.
It would be 130 pounds, from
Yeah.
the money equation in England to watch the fight, and it's coming on at 3 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah.
So when you think about people being enthusiastic about this occurring, a lot of that deals with the time frame and when it's going to be broadcasted around the world, and then this reality check that people start thinking.
Yeah.
That we haven't seen this guy in his life of professionalism go beyond 5 rounds.
No. No.
So you think about this. This goes back to the Ali Foreman. When Ali analyzed Foreman to the media, it's like, it's been a long time since George has heard round 3,
Yeah.
round 5, round 7,
Yeah.
round 11. He said George doesn't know what those numbers mean. He can't count past 5. Okay? That's what he said about George Foreman. Y'all go piss George off.
Yeah.
But this is the same thing we're looking at with Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
He can't count past 3, Charlton.
No,
Okay?
yeah, and that's when he's sober.
He can't go past 3 rounds.
Yeah.
Now, once he gets to round 5, he's in that mental no man's land.
Yeah.
And athletes know what I'm talking about when you talk about that mental no man's
Yeah.
land, because this is some place that you haven't been before. Now your body is starting to say, hey, we're supposed to be in the hospital right now.
Yeah, that's funny. It reminds me of the late Richard Pryor, who I used to sneak his tapes and listen to him when I was a little boy, and you shouldn't, I said X-rated or whatever. I remember listening to him, and he talked about boxing this guy, and Richard, all these guys were telling Richard how good he was, and he was going to beat this guy who was just a knockout champion, and so Richard knew he couldn't fight, but all of his friends kept saying, come on, Richard, you can beat him, stick and move, and then he got into the ring, and he realized that this was the real deal. His friends couldn't help him when he was in the ring, and he got knocked out, but his legs were in good shape, and he couldn't fall down. Make sure you recall that story. Something happens when you get into a ring with someone who does it for a living. It reminds me of Ronda Rousey and Holly Holmes. Ronda Rousey, great MMA fighter. Holly Holmes was also a great boxer. And when she used her boxing skills, what happened to Rousey? She got knocked out because she wasn't used to boxing. She was an MMA girl. And for anyone who wants to come up with their own story, just go back to the Ronda Rousey, Holly Holmes fight. Ronda Rousey was not a boxer. She was an MMA girl. But Holmes was a good boxer. And one of them ended up on the ground being knocked out, and it might be the same thing in this fight coming up. But Big C, when I talk about that, I just want to get your thoughts on that, Big C. Yeah.
Of another fighter. And that's the same thing with McGregor. We know he's been choked out in fights.
Yeah.
So he can't stay at a distance and dominate. The MMA is not built on distance fighting.
No.
It's built on infighting, being able to use a knee and elbow, to grab someone, to try to torque them.
To kick them.
And this is something you can't do in the boxing ring.
Yeah.
Floyd Mayweather is a master of distance jumping.
Yeah.
He's going to fight you from the locker room if he can.
Yeah.
And that's the difference in the fight.
Yeah.
Is that if you can't get to the guy, it's like Ali said, your hands can't hit what your eyes
can't see. Float like a butterfly, steam like a bee. That's a very good point, Big C. I want to just bounce around on this Happy Friday. There's I guess his name is Neiman. He left Barcelona, and he's the richest contractor in sports history. Is it $53 million a year to play French soccer, or is that for a 3-year? I was wondering if it's a typo. Is that $53 million a year, Big C?
You're talking about Neymar, Jonathan, who left Barcelona and went to the French soccer league. Not only that, you think about it, he just signed a $53 million a year contract.
Wow.
Now, I'm still trying to get my nickels and dimes.
Yeah.
You think about how America's land-based over these NBA players getting these contracts,
Yeah.
NFL players getting contract extensions. We're talking about $53 million. $53 million, Charlton, is 80% of an NFL salary
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
80% of an NFL salary cap was just signed by Neymar.
Yeah.
One individual soccer player. He no longer wanted to be on the team with Ronaldo. It was sort of like the LeBron Kyrie Irving,
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
I want my own star.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he'll be a better player in the French soccer league, but he's making a whole lot of money. I'd be good regardless.
I'd be good going to the bank with that kind of money every year, Big C. And most of the world doesn't even know who he is.
Think about this, Joe. He's the third best soccer player in the world.
Yeah.
Think about this. He was signed for $53 million, but it was $220 million to buy him out of his contract.
Yeah.
So you think about the money that transpired in 1 week for one player. Matter of fact, in 3 days. Over 3 days, over $250 million.
Wow.
For one player in a 3-day span to buy him out of his contract and to sign him to a contract. So when people here in America start crying about that NBA players and Major League Baseball players are making too much money.
Yeah.
And that, they just don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Go look at Neymar's contract.
Yeah.
That, one team spent $250 million in a matter of 3 days to get this guy out of a contract and sign him to a contract.
Imagine what.
They think about the most happiest person, Charlton, is his dad, okay?
Yeah.
No, really. His dad is his agent.
Oh, really? That's not a bad thing, Big Z. That's a nice allowance that his father gave him, Big Z. Also in the world of sports, Avery Johnson, I guess for Alabama, gets a contract extension for the good old boys down south. Big Z, your thoughts? Yeah. Yeah.
So he went to the University of Alabama a couple of years ago, Charlton, and in the past 2 years he's been 37-30.
Yeah.
As a coach, so he's turned that program around. Even in the shadow of Nick Saban, they made the tournament last year, Charlton. So there's some promising attributes going on down at Alabama. They're looking at getting some balance
Yeah.
in their athletic programs. The baseball team has always been solid. We know what your buddy Nick Saban does with the football team.
Yeah.
Basketball consistently, and so they signed Avery Johnson to a contract extension.
Yeah, and obviously he deserves it. He'll turn that program around. Obviously, he has it in his pedigree, playing many years in the NBA, especially remember him with the San Antonio Spurs. Also, as we jump across to the world of the NFL, Mike Tomlin, I think he's the third winningest active football coach in the NFL behind Belichick and Andy Reid, and then you have Tomlin, who also has a Super Bowl championship. There were people talking about firing him last year for some knuckleheaded reason, and now he gets a contract extension I think is deserved by him. He's been the main focal point for the Steelers. Roethlisberger's been hurt several times throughout his career, Big C, but Tomlin's, he's been someone you can count on consistently on the sideline, and a lot of players play hard for him, Big C. Your thoughts? Yeah.
1970. So this is an organization and a family, the Rooney family,
Yeah.
who believes in consistency, okay?
Yeah.
And believes in loyalty. And that's what they've had, starting with Chuck Noll,
Yeah.
went on to Bill Cowher, and now with Mike Tomlin, Charlton. And all those coaches have produced Super Bowl success.
Yeah.
So that's what you look at in the lineage of what you have out there in the coaching fraternity in the NFL.
Yeah.
How many head coaches in the NFL have not sniffed anything compared to what Mike Tomlin has as far as success, okay?
Yeah.
We're talking about a consistent playoff coach, okay? Jonathan Williams has been in Super Bowls. That's hard to replicate on any level.
Yeah.
But to be able to keep an organization stable, overall, he has not had the media problems that a lot of other coaches and teams have had.
Yeah.
Every team in the NFL is going to have this straight player. But Mike Tomlin has run a tight ship. He has kept his players, the nucleus intact. He has some of the brightest stars in the NFL when you look at his offense with Roethlisberger,
Yeah.
Brown, and the running back.
Yeah.
These guys, Charlton, are perennial superstars. And his defense has always been solid. I mean, you think about, he has James Harrison, the oldest defensive player in the NFL, who's still playing at an all-pro level.
Yeah.
So there's something about wanting to play for a certain guy, and that's Mike Tomlin, that
You know,
Le'Veon Bell was who I was thinking about, the running back.
yeah, he's amazing. Hopefully he'll be happy with whether he gets his extension or not. But I do want to bring up another guy that I think sometimes I hear things, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but Jay Cutler, I think he retired last year from the Bears, BC. Now that Tannehill is out in Miami, I think Tannehill is looking at the same opportunity that a lot of quarterbacks who did not retire are looking for. He thinks he could play for the Miami Dolphins, and they want to bring him out of the broadcast booth. They're even entertaining that, Big C. Would that be a dumb thing to do, Big C? Your thoughts? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They both got the same arm and the same mentality. Jay Cutler doesn't give a damn about playing football, truly.
Yeah.
I want to see him in the broadcast booth because he was sleeping. You know, when you look at Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
Jay Cutler was sleepy, all right?
Yeah.
That's who he was. He would play sleepy if he was one of the Seven Dwarfs.
Yeah.
He didn't care. I mean, when they talk about marijuana not being legal in the NFL,
Yeah.
I think Jay Cutler's been on marijuana for the last decade.
He's been on something.
His eyes was tight. He was lackadaisical. He couldn't see the field half the time. So he was for marijuana that was
Yeah.
legal in the NFL, Charles.
Yeah, he's relaxed. I want to bring up another quarterback that comes, from the Midwest. We talk about when would we get the Caucasian athletes standing up for Black Lives Matter or even White Lives Matter, but white guys don't have a history of being shot by law enforcement and then having them lie about what happened, being threatened for their lives. That's why they did it, all that garbage. We know it's been around since the Kerner Commission. But Aaron Rodgers, he actually grew up in California, went to a junior college in Northern California, and then went to the Cal Berkeley. But he had a conversation with Adam Sterling, NBA commissioner, and he mentioned that he applauds Sterling. Sterling for letting people. The athletes don't have the same issue that NFL players. Adam Silver. Thank you, Big C. They don't have the same issue for letting players speak out, and he applauded that. I think that's a backhanded way of saying even white guys feel the pressure of speaking out. They know what's happening to Colin Kaepernick is wrong. Even the great Harry Edwards said, he started this thing in the Olympics. It's called the Project for Human Rights. And whether Kaepernick gets a job or not, we just want to end discrimination. We want to end sexism. So that means if you see it, you got to shout it out. Does that make sense, Big C? I'm glad we're having a Caucasian guy, even though he's not doing it vehemently, like Sherman is, but he is saying something. I'm proud for even the white guys saying that. Big C, your thoughts?
Okay, John, I want to take you back to the NCAA a couple of years ago, last year.
Yeah.
And you had 4 basketball players stand up and say, do you remember who they were?
Yeah, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, and there was Chris Paul, and one more person. I can't recall his name at this time. Dwayne Wade.
Now, you and I did a show a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about how many players had guaranteed contracts in the NBA and in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
All 4 of those players had guaranteed contracts.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're making their money regardless.
Yeah.
Even if you cut them, you still got to pay them. But that's the difference. Even Aaron Rodgers has a guaranteed contract. They can say NFL contracts are not guaranteed. His contract is guaranteed. He's guaranteed money.
Yeah.
The top 10 white quarterbacks in the NFL are all guaranteed contracts. I don't care what people say. It may not state that, but you're going to pay them.
Yeah.
You're not going to cut them. Those athletes who stood up at the ESPYs, Charlton, got guaranteed contracts. And that's the difference in athletes speaking up and not speaking up. And I'm not saying that these athletes are not
Right.
genuine.
Right.
It's just that they understand their place. I mean, it's been stated. Richard Sherman said, stay in your place.
Yeah.
They're in a place that's untouchable, so it's very easy for them to speak.
Yeah.
When we look at the layman average athlete out there, Charlton, who's on that year-to-year contract, who is in his option, he's not going to say anything because he's marginal borderline.
Yeah.
He knows that he can be replaced by Kaepernick, and that's the difference. So you got Aaron Rodgers speaking up, who has a guaranteed contract.
Yeah.
But you don't hear other quarterbacks speaking up that don't have guaranteed contracts. Derek Carr has a guaranteed contract. He just spoke up saying he hopes that Kaepernick gets signed.
Yeah.
He just got $120 million so he can say whatever he wants to say.
Yeah.
But you look at the guy who doesn't have that, Charlton. You're not going to get Deshaun Watson saying anything, okay? He's not. Rookie contract.
Yeah.
You're not going to get anybody on the second second year. You're not even going to get a backup quarterback jumping in the NFL to say a peep. You know, Miles pissing on cotton.
Well,
quarterback in the NFL right now. But, you know, as we look at it, the players who say something, didn't Richard Sherman just sign this huge contract last year?
Yeah.
His money's guaranteed. He's not going anywhere because it's too much of a salary cap hit for Seattle. They get rid of Sherman. They take a $25 million salary cap hit.
Yeah.
They can't even sign a practice player. So understand who says what in the NFL as far as backing cap.
Yeah.
You gotta look at what the contract says, okay?
Yeah.
If the team cuts me, it's a $25 million cap hit, so the team is not cutting me. That's called guaranteed money.
Yeah.
The NBA players who spoke up, that's called guaranteed money. So, but we don't have coaches. Think about it. These are the guys who make the difference.
Yeah.
How many coaches in the NFL have said this guy should be playing? That's the key point.
Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick. Forget all the other, fiduciary things on the side. How many coaches in the NFL have said Colin Kaepernick should be on an NFL roster because there's not 15 quarterbacks out there better than Colin Kaepernick. There's not 20 quarterbacks. Definitely not 32 quarterbacks.
Definitely.
Better than Colin Kaepernick. So until we get NFL coaches, Charles, saying Colin Kaepernick should be on a roster, Colin Kaepernick will not be on an NFL roster.
And Big C, that's a point that I'm glad that Adam Silver actually, when people can talk to him about it, and they can't talk to Roger Goodell about it, but Roger Goodell makes, I think, $44 million a year or somewhere along that line. Yeah.
Why did Aaron Rodgers have to go outside the NFL grass?
Yeah.
Talk to another league.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Goodell who you work for. Why did you not go to Roger Goodell and make this statement?
Yeah.
You could have made this statement without doing Colin Kaepernick's thing, but you could have made this same statement about those NBA players having that opportunity to speak without having repercussions. But you go away from your workforce. So it's almost like speaking behind the woods here, John.
Yeah.
It's like what the good old boys say in private, it doesn't get out. So you can use it anywhere to
Yeah.
because everybody's white.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't offend anybody.
Well,
And that's basically what Aaron Rodgers did going to Adam Silver. Let me go over here and talk to you because I don't want to piss off Roger Goodell.
Yeah, and that's a shame that Goodell has, black men have made him a multi-millionaire. And to not stand up for anything that addresses the children of those African-American athletes, I think that's the biggest shame in it. I mean, athletes are going to have their money, but it really is about, we do need criminal justice reform in this country, and the employer of the employer of a lot of African-American men, NBA and the NFL, when it comes to pro sports, you would think the commissioners who have a huge bank accounts because of the talents of these black men, yet they say nothing to support the young kids that these black men have, and I think that's the shame in it all. Big C, I do want to touch on one thing before we close out. I want to say sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation for that billion-dollar industry. For every sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We go through Ben and Mark. They've been around half a century. They work with Big C Sports. Reach out to them, let them know that Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C, as we close out, I just want to run down a few thoughts. College football, even though we touched on it last month, I think the polls came out today in certain media outlets. And, of course, it's a traditional Alabama #1, and they have up there at #2 is Ohio State, and then Florida State, USC, and back and forth, whoever you want. Obviously, the one thing that I want to point out, because it won't be pointed out elsewhere, as we talk about people being maligned and marginalized in the NFL when it comes to the black quarterback, 3 of the top 4 college-ranked football teams, they start African-American quarterbacks. And the reason I say that is because this will be the easiest time for them to get a job. Because once this starts playing about who's going to go to the NFL, they'll start marginalizing J.T. Barrett, they'll marginalize Jalen Hurts at Alabama, Barrett at Ohio State, and they'll marginalize DeAndre Francois out of Florida State. And they'll jump these guys with Sam Darnold out of USC, who's never even completed a full season. I want you to just touch on that as we close, Big C. What can these guys do this year as far as maybe locking up the opportunity to be a first-round draft pick in the NFL and not be marginalized like you've seen happen so many years, Big C? Your thoughts? In his conference, yeah.
The first player taken in the draft, he's only the 4th best quarterback in his conference.
Yeah.
When you look at these other quarterbacks, they're the best quarterbacks in their conference.
Yeah.
They have consistently been on winning programs, Charlton, from high school through college.
Yeah.
They're nationally ranked. But everybody else gives Donald the praise, and if you have 3 quarterbacks in this conference better, he just have to play the biggest name school in the conference.
Yeah.
So, whether he's 6'5" is white. That's what everybody wants. But when you look at his throwing motion, Charlton, that's where he has a hindrance. He throws the ball from the waist, which in the NFL will be picked off 20 times a season. So this is his problem. He's not a prototypical pro quarterback. He's just prototypical size.
Yeah.
The African-American quarterbacks give you a better chance of winning. But if they come into the NFL and win, Charlton, such as the African-American quarterbacks who have been there,
Yeah.
that have changed the face of the game, that Colin Kaepernick did, he changed what defenses had to do, that they could not be normal. He made all pro defensive players look basic.
Yeah.
Just like Michael Vick did before he became the ultimate criminal in the NFL. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
He did that to defenses, and people had a problem with him. And so Colin Kaepernick was doing what Michael Vick was doing on the field, but not killing dogs.
Yeah.
Right? So, they had a problem with that. And that's the same thing that hurt at Francois. These guys who do coming into the NFL, Charlton.
Yeah.
Zaire. They come into the NFL, they bring mobility. What happens when you bring mobility is that you make a lot of white players obsolete. Not just white defensive linemen and linebackers, Charlton, but white offensive linemen, because they don't have the mobility to move at that level. So you change the entire structure of a league because of the athleticism of individuals.
Yeah.
That's what happened. And this is what the NFL has seen occurring over the decades, is that they've seen that black athletes have evolved quicker than white athletes.
Well,
So it's put a hindrance and danger on a lot of white careers, Joe.
And we know, and we bring it up because that has been the premise for NFL teams. They've always wanted that certain look. Big C, we know it's a happy Friday. A lot of good things happening this weekend, especially in baseball. When you have the baseball chase in the National League, the Dodgers have a 14-game lead in the West. The Cubs have a 2-game lead in the Central. In the East, Washington has a 12-game lead. In the American League, Houston's up 15. And Cleveland has a 2.5-game lead. Boston has a 1-game lead over the Yankees. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Bundini Brown. He was Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He used to say, "Rumble, young man, rumble." Big C, what are you looking forward to in the world of sports?
I'm all excited. We finally had a kickoff last night in football, so the life is coming back to normal.
Yeah.
We're going to get through some preseason games, hopefully here soon. I'm so excited about the Hall of Fame this week, Charlton.
Yes.
Some of the alumni going in, being enshrined forever, becoming immortalized in the NFL Hall of Fame, Charlton. The highest award that you can receive in the NFL, being immortalized. I mean, there's some players that have been overlooked because the media haven't liked them, but you got to see the praise for the guys who got in this year.
Well, Big C, I'm very happy for the players who get in. I'm also very happy that football is back in every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the iHeartRadio network, the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. We got to tell you, there's never any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any woman or any man going through that garbage, just call 911 because no one should have to do with that on their own. As we always take it on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic weekend.